This is Jennifer Hale, and you're listening to the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. And, I should go.
The tangents of squeak continue all the way to episode 225 of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. Hey, what's up? I'm a superhero. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. So glad you joined us. Let's start off like we do with the virtual table and see who's joined us this week.
This is Brittany in Bethlehem.
This is Sally from Wisconsin.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Tweety bird outside. You do not see a putty tat. This is a pet-free apartment complex. Yeah. Although the people across the street can have pets, so maybe you did. I don't know. Anyway, Tweety's going to give his 2 cents in the background. Either that or Tweety's looking for some love in one of the two. It's springtime.
Yep. Oh, maybe they're begging you for a bird feeder, but no.
They can take care of themselves.
Yep.
Anyway, that's been Nature Minute with Rachel. Next up, the news. First up in news, some convention/events you should know about. As time has gone on, kind of expanded. So first up, locally, at least for me down in Bloomington, wanted to let people know that starting this Friday, the 12th, running through the 20th of April, there's going to be a production of Jekyll and Hyde, which is actually the adaptation written by Nicholas Briggs.
Oh, cool.
Who most of all of us know as the voice of the Daleks.
Yeah.
From Doctor Who. And so apparently his version was first presented at the Theatre Royal Nottingham on August 1st in 2015. And then this production, which is going to take place at the Ivy Tech Community College in Bloomington, is actually the first United States premiere of this production following a successful regional tour of the UK. And I think most people are aware of the story, the general gist of, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But it's actually being directed by friend of the show and editor for Big Finish, Russell McGee.
Cool.
Nice.
So they are doing that. It starts at the end of this week and runs through the 20th of April. So we'll put a link to the online box office. So if anyone is close enough and wants to go, you can buy your tickets and go see it. So that's kind of exciting. And then convention-wise, Indie PopCon still making guest announcements, and they just made a very exciting and relevant guest announcement, very relevant to what was just released and what we're talking about this week. Thank you, PopCon, for that search engine optimization. Tag words. They just announced Asher Angel, who plays young Billy in Shazam.
Cool.
Neat.
So when he's not the superhero, played by this kid, and then when he's the superhero, he's played by Zachary Levi. So he is going to be at Indie PopCon. And then, as was rumored, it turned out to be true, but Avengers Endgame tickets did go on sale last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, at one point, I had my phone going next to me with both Regal and AMC apps open. And then on my laptop, I had AMC's website, Regal's website, and Fandango open, bouncing between all of them, trying to get tickets. Because both AMC and Regal, at least as far as I'm aware, I know there's other companies, but where I live, those are the two big ones. Both of them were completely overwhelmed once tickets went on sale. So was Fandango, but at least with Fandango, once you got into the website and started the process, it would tell you how long the wait is approximately. And when I got the website to work, it told me my wait was over an hour, and probably said that for almost an hour, probably. And then at some point it said that the line had been paused. So it was no longer like counting down, I guess. It wasn't doing anything. And then it started back up again. It still said over an hour. It finally got to an hour, and then it started counting down. Once it started counting down, we were good. But it's still from the time I got Fandango's website to work to originally get in the queue to the time I actually was able to purchase tickets and got confirmation and have them now in my inbox. It was 2.5, 3 hours, probably.
Wow. I
probably spent 4 hours total between the different websites and apps trying to get Endgame tickets. Good news is I got them. I got them for Friday night, so it's not Thursday night like I wanted, but Friday night I will still take, and they were IMAX, which is what I wanted. So that's good. But
I still have to wait to buy mine because my theater's so small, I can't do the Fandango purchase option. So
yeah. Well, I got less than 3 weeks now, so
yeah,
won't be too much longer.
Nope.
That being said, it should not be a surprise to anyone who fought the virtual lines. If I hadn't had to work, I would have just gone to the theater and physically done it. But I had to work, which actually worked in my favor because that meant I could have that stuff open and hitting refresh while, and then Fandango could do its virtual queue thing while I'm working. It could be sitting in the background. So, but that being said, it only took 6 hours for Avengers Endgame to become the top selling pre-sale title on Fandango.
Yeah. And oh my goodness, I saw some of the prices for resale on eBay. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I read an article about that, but so people have been putting them on eBay trying to sell them, but as far as I can tell, nobody's actually bit.
Oh, good.
I read an article that someone did buy one of those really expensive ones, but in New Jersey, it was like a local. I don't know, and I think that one was like, it was over 1,000. I know that. I'm like, why are you buying? It's not that.
Yeah.
I
had a gift card.
Mm-hmm.
I got two seats opening, Friday night in IMAX for Chauncey and I in halfway decent seats towards the back, towards the middle. Mm-hmm. And with the gift card, it came to be relatively inexpensive. So it's like patience pays off, folks.
Yes, patience in Padawan.
Yeah. Apparently, The Force Awakens held that title, but now it is Avengers Endgame. So we will see.
When eBay would have been cracking down too on some of those sales with their ridiculous
you
prices.
Would think. Yeah, I was talking about that with a gal at the Disney store. I've gone to the Disney store last week because I had a gift card. And she'd asked me how long it took me because I was looking at Marvel merchandise. And she asked me how long it took me. So I was like, about 4 hours. So that sounds about right. And we were talking about how people were putting them up on eBay and asking like exorbitant amounts of money for them. It's like, for that amount of money, I better be going to the movie with primo seats, like sitting on Robert Downey Jr.'s lap.
Yes.
For that
or
price.
food or 5-star dinner service to go with that movie.
Yes. It's like, I better be sitting like me and like surrounded by the entire cast.
Yeah.
And it being a private viewing.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
With like the
With
spirit of
photograph and
Stan Lee handing me popcorn.
Yeah. With photograph and autograph session included.
Yeah, really. Like, in that case, yes, I'll spend $15,000 on a movie theater movie ticket.
Exactly. Like that one that I found, it wasn't even for IMAX.
Yeah.
Like,
So it was madness. It was madness last week, and my Facebook and social media feeds were all sorts of combinations of people, being very, very frustrated and ready to just forget it. And they're like, fine, I'll see it when it comes out on DVD. And I'm like, no, don't give up. Don't do that. But yeah, I got my tickets. So I just have to survive the next few weeks till I actually go see it. And be very careful about where I go in the internet. Because now they're releasing more clips and more like TV commercials, and they've started doing press with the cast. So there's interviews and talking about things, and no. It's like, I don't want to hear anymore. I don't want to see anymore.
I agree. Like, I was watching something.
Stop.
And they had a TV spot. And there's a scene that I'm like, oh, that's a neat scene. I didn't want to see it. Kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But when it's TV, you can't really avoid it.
Yeah. Because unless within like the first like 2 seconds, like it's some like you recognize somebody. If like Thor appears in the first like 2 seconds, you could be like, close your eyes, plug your ears. But it's not always obvious what it is until it's too late. So, which is fine.
And what's seen cannot be unseen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there. So Avengers Endgame tickets on sale to most people. Obviously, check your local theater where you live. And don't spend $15,000 on tickets.
Yes, please don't.
It's not necessary. Trust me.
As much as we all love Avengers and MCU and how much we really want to see this movie, you shouldn't be willing to pay that much money just to see it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for going as soon as possible to avoid spoilers, but still.
Yeah. There's a limit to...
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, for me, I have to wait. It's like...
You people living in small towns.
It's not that small town. I work the weekend, and there's no way I could possibly go to a 3-hour movie after working 12 hours.
She does have a point.
Yeah.
Especially,
I would say just drink a bunch of coffee, but then you risk having to go pee in the middle of it, and it's a 3-hour-long movie. You don't want to have to get up. You'll miss something.
Exactly. I mean, they are saying there's possible intermission, but I haven't heard anything official.
I haven't either. People keep asking me. It's like, is there going to be an intermission? I'm like, not that I've heard. So
I'm trying to think of any movies that have been that long that they had intermissions. I don't think I ever went to a movie theater with that. No, I went to see Titanic.
Yeah, so Titanic had an intermission
It did?
at one point when it was in theaters. I never saw it in theaters, but I know people that did, and they had an intermission.
They didn't when they had the re-release, I think for like the 10th anniversary or whatever. So I remember seeing it, but I don't remember an intermission.
Yeah. But my problem is with it, if there's a potential to be an intermission, I don't necessarily want to be taken out of the story.
Right.
Even for a short amount of time. So then it's like you're gonna want to talk about what you've seen. Like, no, I just want to take it all in.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's me.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to.
We'll see.
Have you guys seen like AMC and some other theaters of doing a marathon of all the movies right before?
Yes.
There's one in Chrissy's neck of the woods.
Yeah, it's like 50-something hours.
Yeah.
If I had the time and the money.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even if I had the time and the money, I would possibly do it just because there's like the first first two Iron Mans, The Incredible Hulk, and Thor I never saw on the big screen. So I've seen everything else on the big screen since. So it'd be fun to see the first two Iron Mans and Thor back on the big screen. I don't care about The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, I didn't see The Incredible Hulk, and while I technically didn't see the first Iron Man in a official theater, I have seen it like the school I went to. They had like a theater building, and they had like a huge projector screen, and it played movies, and Iron Man was one of them.
Oh, but I wouldn't sit like through all 20-something movies. Like I'd pick and choose.
Yeah, like maybe there's another movie going on at the same time as the movie you didn't want to see. Go see that movie.
Yeah, so like, if there's like, except there's really not a whole lot of them that I wouldn't want to watch. That's the problem. They're all so good, except for The Incredible Hulk. Anyway. So, yeah, we've just got a little over a couple weeks to go till Endgame. Ugh, my poor heart. This month is going to be, if I survive to see May, it'll be a miracle.
We're happy because you still have to watch some Game of Thrones in May.
Yeah, I know. I have to survive the Battle of Winterfell first. All right, that's it for news. And
We're still talking news.
yeah, we don't have any feedback, so we shall move on to this week's topic. So, sound the spoiler alarm. Note to self: insert sound effect here. But we're going to talk. Speaking of PopCon's latest guest announcement, Shazam, which I saw last Friday, and right off the bat, my initial review is it wasn't bad. It's not bad for a DC Universe movie. It's not bad. It's not Wonder Woman, but it's not. It's in the same universe, obviously. It is still part of that same DC Batman versus Superman, Ben Affleck Batman, Henry Cavill Superman, Wonder Woman universe, Jason Momoa, Aquaman. But it's not the best thing I can equate it to for the DC universe is this is the DC universe's Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
I've heard people reference that.
Yeah,
Cool.
where it doesn't take itself as seriously. It's brighter, it's funnier. It's got a fun soundtrack.
Cool.
Your stereotypical superhero montage, like power, not necessarily training montage because he doesn't necessarily train, but they do this whole montage where they're trying to figure out what exactly his powers are because he doesn't know what his powers are. He just gets them and then boom, there he is. So the whole montage is set to a Queen song.
Cool.
So it's in the same vein as something like Guardians of the Galaxy. It's not as good as something like Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's surprisingly better, I think, than people thought it was going to be. Kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy, where they're like, this is an obscure character and people don't really know a whole lot about him and what his backstory is. And it seems kind of ridiculous. And it is kind of ridiculous because it's not. It still touches upon those storyline points that we get a lot, especially with origin stories, where our hero finds himself with these abilities or superpowers or whatever. Figures out what they're capable of, isn't sure, if they want to take on the responsibility of being a superhero, kind of like the first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, where, he gets his powers and he decides to go do like a cage match to make some cash. Shazam is kind of the same way, where he's just using his powers like as a street performer, essentially, taking selfies of people in the park and then asking them for money, kind of like the characters do at Times Square. Or ask like Grauman's in LA. Instead of doing the actual superhero thing, and then is confronted with something that causes them to actually have to be a hero, whether they want to or not. And then, they end up encountering the big bad and have to figure out how to stop the big bad. So it checks all those boxes that you would expect from a superhero origin story. But because the premise is so different than what we've seen before, where you look at Zachary Levi in this outfit, which is really ridiculous when you think of it. Like, why is his cape that short? Why does this cape only go to his butt? Shouldn't it go a little further down? Mm-hmm. Somewhere Edna Mode is like, rolling her eyes so hard. Just like, first of all, no capes. Second of all, if you're going to do a cape, why are you doing a cape so short, darling?
Exactly. Yes. The Edna Mode is coming out.
Okay. Yes.
I kind of want someone to do be Edna Mode and like I can't talk on every superhero costume.
Yes.
Yeah, really.
I would love to hear what she says about Iron Man.
Yeah. Because it's like he can fly.
Right.
So you would think maybe the cape would help with the aerodynamics of flying, but every other superhero we know that can fly that has a cape, the cape goes down to like the ankles.
Yes.
Or at least like knee, maybe mid calf.
Mm-hmm.
His goes to his butt.
Maybe he saw the Incredibles movie and was no capes, but still wanted one, so he went with it higher up, so it's less chance of getting caught. But still, if it flies out, you're gonna still have
I don't know.
problems. Yeah.
I don't know.
If somebody knows, let us know, please.
Yeah, really. So, of all the research I've done in the history of this character, there's nothing to explain why his cape is so short.
Or if Rachel and all her Google full of research hasn't found it, please link us to the right.
Yeah, really. So, but you see Zachary Levi, all the muscles, in the suit with the cape and the glowing lightning bolt on his chest, and you think, oh, like a Superman type character, muscles, can fly, that sort of thing. But literally internally, in reality, he's a 14-year-old boy. And he acts like it. The way he talks, the way he tries to do things when he first turns into Shazam, like he drops something or tries to pick up something and he drops it and he's like, stupid adult hands or stupid grown-up hands, because he doesn't know how to use these bigger hands that he's got now. It is his friend slash foster brother, Freddie. He's like, dude, what are your superpowers? He's just like, powers, dude, I don't even know how to pee in this thing.
I'm not gonna lie, I always love like those stories when a kid suddenly grows up to be an adult and still has like the child mind and still talking like a child but in a grown-up body.
Yeah,
love that.
Yeah. Well, the whole idea, I guess, the writers and the director really wanted this to be like if Superman met Big, the Tom Hanks movie, essentially.
Oh.
So that's what it is. It's like he looks like an adult, but he's not an adult. He's still a 14-year-old kid, and he just bounces back and forth between these two bodies essentially by saying the magic word Shazam. And Zachary Levi's performance is just, it's hilarious to watch. If you get around to watching it, if you haven't yet, and especially when he's being an actual superhero, once he finally meets the bad guy, he every now and then he would do the face that's like super serious. I'm the good guy, you're the bad guy. I've got to stop you. This is I'm going to be a superhero now type face, except because he's not an adult, he's a teenager, he hasn't even gone through puberty yet, I don't think. The face that Zachary Levi makes reminds me of like the face you would get if you asked like a toddler to make their best like mean face. It is so not the face you expect a superhero to make. It looks cartoonish, and it's because
that scrunched up face.
Yeah,
trying to be angry, but they're still kind of smiling.
Yeah, like he doesn't know how to look intimidating because he's not old enough. He's not had enough life experience to know how to look intimidating, and it shows on the face. It's hilarious. It is absolutely hilarious. But the story, the overall plot, it's pretty predictable. It starts out pretty dark actually, because it gives us the origin actually of our main villain, which I did not put two and two together right away. So I was very confused. I'm like, wait, I thought this other kid was going to become Shazam, and then stuff happens and causes our bad guy to become evil. And he makes it. He's a kid at the time, but his experience with the wizard doesn't go very well. So that in turn, he decides to make it his life mission to figure out how to get back to I think it's a Rock of Eternity, I think is what it's called, to try to get that power again. But in the process, it turns him evil and bitter. But then you have Billy, who is this foster kid, which if you watch the trailers, they talk about, how he's ran away from a whole bunch of foster homes. And we discover that the reason he's run away is because he doesn't want to, because he hasn't always been in foster care. He was with his mom up until he was like 3 or something. And some stuff happened and he ended up in the foster care system, but he's so sure that eventually he will find his mom and they will be a family again, that he doesn't want to settle into a foster home and develop feelings for anyone, because then it'll make it easier to leave once he finds his mom again. But then he ends up in this group home with this collection of kids that are all different ages and races and stuff. There's a little girl named Darla, I think. And she's super adorable. she's a little black girl, and she's super adorable. And she automatically, before he's even moved in, she's already made him a welcome brother sign, and she's hugging him and calling him brother. And then there's there's Freddie, who's about his age. There's the one that uses I guess it's I guess it's kind of a crutch, but the type where it has like the thing that goes around your arm, and then have the thing to hold on to. So it's a type of a crutch. He uses a crutch. They never really explained why he has it. He gives Billy a couple of fake answers just to get a reaction out of him, but we never find out for real why Freddie has the crutch. And then there's 2 other boys. There's a boy who's really big into video games. And then there's another who's very quiet. And then there's the oldest girl who's a senior in high school, is getting ready to go to college. It's quite the collection of cast of characters, and the foster parents are actually really cool. What little screen time we get, they seem like really cool people. But once again, Billy does not want to put down roots and develop emotional attachments to anyone, because he thinks he's going to get reunited with his mom and live happily ever after with her. But as you could probably guess, eventually he does realize that, yeah, he actually does care for these people, and it's okay to let them care for him. And that in turn actually helps him and them, the other kids, work together to help defeat the bad guy, which I saw coming at a certain point, but that's one of those things that I won't spoil, because once they figure out how to team up, it's quite funny, actually. So the way they did it.
I haven't seen it, but like in my head, I'm kind of picturing Guardians of the Galaxy. The whole
It is kind of Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's like these rogue cast of different characters and personalities have got to come together to figure out how to stop the bad guy. It's kind of like, when they're all in the circle, and Rocket stands up. He's like, "Oh, you see now, I'm standing too." We're a bunch of jackasses, standing in a circle. So it definitely because it is Guardians-like, it doesn't take itself quite as seriously. Like I said, it does poke fun at some superhero tropes. Things like the montage trying to figure out what his super powers are. At one point, they stop a holdup at a convenience store, and he figures out that he's bulletproof, not just the suit, but him himself. And what have I? The funniest is he and the bad guy have flown away from where like the final like confrontation is taking place, and they're chasing each other through. It's set in Philadelphia, and it's not far from you, Brittany. Not filmed in Philly, but that's where it's set.
If it was filmed in Philly, I would have tried to go down there.
No, it was filmed in Toronto. It's set at Christmas time, which is kind of weird watching this time of year. What are you gonna do?
I guess we could put it on Christmas
in July.
Yeah. It's one of those Christmas movies. It's not really a Christmas movie, but you can watch it at Christmas time.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, Die Hard, Lethal Weapon,
Gremlins. Yep. Shazam. But at one point they're flying away. They fly away from this winter carnival, and the bad guy. I can't remember the character's name. Dr. something. Played by Mark Strong. But they're flying in between these buildings, and then they stop, and the bad guy starts going into like villain monologue, not necessarily like what his evil plan is, because we already know what his evil plan is, but more like
evil speech of evil.
It's more like the evil taunt of evil. Okay. Where he's like, I have, it's like, I'm so much stronger than you. I'm gonna,
Does Dr. Savannah ring a bell?
Yes, Dr. Savannah. He goes into his like taunting, like, I'm so powerful. There's no way you can beat me. I'm gonna destroy this town and everything. Hurt all the people you care about. Blah 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 blah. But then it's like he's doing his evil taunt, and then the camera backs out, and they're like super far from each other. And Shazam is like, "Are you saying something? I can't hear you because he's so far away." And apparently, super hearing is not one of his abilities. It is. Dr. Savant is still doing his taunt, and Shazam's like, "What?" And it's like, "I can't hear you." Oh, fuck. Oh, so
your mother did what?
Yeah, really. Finally, he's like, screw it, and goes and flies and whacks a guy in the face or something. So, and there's plenty of nods to the other DC heroes that we've been introduced to already. Freddy is a huge fan of Batman, Superman, and Aquaman. Specifically, he owns a version of the Batarang that's like actual metal. He has newspaper clippings from like the Daily Planet.
So kind of like Coulson almost.
Yeah, he's a bit like Coulson. And like Coulson, these superheroes exist in this universe, so it's not like he's just a fan of them because they're comic books. It's because they're actual people. Mm-hmm. They don't really specify where this fits in as far as the timeline, with like Justice League and Batman versus Superman. So we don't know at this point if this is post Justice League, so Superman's back, or not. It doesn't really say. It just, it goes from like the flashback to present day, and it just says today. So, other than it's Christmas time, but beyond that, we have no idea. But like Freddy has like different shirts. He wears a Batman shirt, he wears a Superman shirt, he wears an Aquaman shirt at one point. There's a clip in one of the trailers that's in the movie where they're trying to see if he can talk to fish. He's like, that's a dumb power. He's like, why would I want to do that? And he's like gesturing to his shirt because it's got the Jason Momoa Aquaman like logo, where it's like that real like metallic steampunky like logo. And he's like, so you could, handle a legion of millions of aquatic creatures. He's like, oh, like that's still kind of a dumb power. Totally making fun of Aquaman. I have to expect a Jason Momoa as Aquaman to show up and be like, dude.
Yeah. What you saying?
Yeah.
Would you like to replace that?
Yeah. Technically, none of the Justice League members that we have seen so far show up. And I will leave it at that.
I was going to say,
technically. Technically, none of the faces of any of the Justice League members that we know so far have shown up.
Okay. I kind of think where I know where you're going. Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah. Again, I will leave that. So, but it's implied during the closing credits that Shazam does join the Justice League. So we'll see at what point he shows up, because that will be interesting to see how he fits in, kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy once they came into Infinity War. It's like, how these guys that their personality and like their tone is so different than what we've had so far. It will be really interesting to see how he fits in.
Yeah, the little I know of Shazam, like from the commercials I've seen, I can just imagine him teaming up with like Batman.
Yeah.
That would kind of be
like,
hilarious.
Could you two be any more different? Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I mean, overall, it was way more entertaining than I thought it was going to be. I mean, just based on the trailers, I thought it was going to be entertaining. But you don't know with these DC movies. It's been so hit or miss. Mm-hmm. So hit or miss with these that it's just been, like my expectations with the DCU are not high to begin with. So the bar was set pretty low going into it, and it actually, I think it exceeded my expectations, at least as far as the entertainment value of it. It could be a little shorter. It's probably about 10-15 minutes too long. There's some bits that could be trimmed down easily, and you wouldn't lose a whole lot as far as plot and storytelling. Especially considering we don't get a lot of character development outside of Billy / Shazam and Freddy. We don't really get a whole lot more out of the other kids. And even Dr. Savan, we don't really get a whole lot, but the mid-credit scene sets up a sequel. So, which I was totally clueless on what exactly they were setting up, because I know even less about the DC comics than I do Marvel. So it's got Dr. Savan and another bad guy that I had no idea who it was until I got home and was like, okay, somebody explain this mid-credit scene to me. They're like, oh, it's this character, and this is the character. This is the short version of this character's backstory from the comics. I'm like, okay.
I know it's funny.
I was like, I still don't know who this is, but okay.
that reminds me when I watching Legends of Tomorrow, they were promoting this new character that I knew was a DC character. I was like, I'd be more excited if I actually knew who this person was.
Mm-hmm. That being said, a lot of times with these movies, even the Marvel movies, when they go to set up something like in a mid-credit or post-credit scene, a lot of the times I still have no idea what they're setting up. Like, well, the first Avengers, and we see Thanos for the first time. I didn't know who he was.
True.
So that at the end of the day, that doesn't necessarily mean much. So as far as my reaction, but I know at the end of Avengers, and people are like, "Oh, Thanos," and I'm like, "Who?" And now here we are, 7 years later, and I'm like, "Dang it, Thanos!"
Yep.
I know who you are, and I've seen what you can do. Speaking of Thanos, though, weird segue, but part of the reason why I wanted to talk about Shazam, one, because DC actually made a decent movie again. It's only taken them how many years since Wonder Woman to make another decent one. So I wanted to have an opportunity to be like, hey, if you were on the fence, go see this one. You won't hopefully be disappointed. But two, because Shazam has a very interesting story, not necessarily, I don't mean like the character's story, but the history of the character, where they came from, and the comics, the production themselves, to another superhero that recently had a movie released, Captain Marvel. So, for those that don't know, and I think they kind of make fun of this in the movie by never really giving Zachary Levi's character an actual name. Like, Freddie keeps trying to come up with names for him, like Captain Sparkle Fingers and and all, the Red Cyclone and all these other things. They never actually call him Shazam. Anyone could call him Shazam to his face and it'd be fine. Billy himself, if he says the name Shazam, if he's Billy at the moment, he turns into Shazam, and then if he says it again, he turns back into Billy. So he can never actually say his name, but other people could say it to him and it wouldn't do anything. But it's that in itself, I think, is maybe partially why they never really gave him an official title, and also because of the history of the character's name. And that is because the character originally was created in 1939. So we're getting a little history lesson here. So sit in your chairs, folks. There'll be a quiz at the end. I'm just kidding. The character was originally created in 1939 by Fawcett Comics. And the character's name originally was Captain Marvel.
Huh.
Yeah. So, Marvel Comics actually did not exist in 1939. The company that would eventually become Marvel, Timely Comics, did. But first it would go through another name change and become Magazine Management, because, that just screams comic books.
I totally read those comics.
Yeah. Yeah, really. And then it eventually became Marvel Comics. But in 1939, it was not Marvel Comics. So Fawcett Comics came up with this character called Captain Marvel. And originally, he was supposed to be a team of 7 different characters, all with different powers based on like Greek and mythic gods, which is actually where the name Shazam comes from. It's actually an acronym from where the gods that he gets his different powers from. And when Billy gets the powers from the wizard, funnily enough, played by Dijman Hansu, who was also in Captain Marvel. funnily enough, and Guardians of the Galaxy. Transfers his powers to him. He makes this grand speech. He's like, my powers go to you, and you will be imbued with the powers of the gods. You will get the wisdom of Solomon, S, the strength of Hercules, H, the stamina of Atlas, the power of Zeus, the courage of Achilles, and the speed of Mercury.
Oh, that's cool.
Let's put that together, which that should be interesting that he has the power. One of his powers comes from the god Zeus when he meets Wonder Woman, considering Zeus is Wonder Woman's father.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, funny story.
Yeah. I've got the power of your dad. It's like, does that make me like your stepfather, or it could be interesting.
Hopefully, anyway, we won't have any sibling rivalry like Thor and Loki.
Yeah, really. So, anyway, back to the history. So he was originally supposed to be this grouping of 7 characters. They eventually condensed him into one character, Billy Baston, this teenager. Although they do reference the it was supposed to be 7 because the wizards. He's like, I'm the last of the council of whatever of 7. So there were 6 other wizards at one point. Now there's just him. So in the 1940s, Captain Marvel actually became the most popular superhero in comics, outselling even Superman.
Wow.
Which DC did not like that very much. So in the 1950s, in 1941, Detective Comics, which is what DC was originally called, and eventually they shortened to DC, and Superman Inc., because they were 2 different companies at the time, and eventually they merged to just DC. But in 1941, they tried to have Fawcett cease publication of the Captain Marvel comics, and because they claimed that it was a copyright infringement, essentially, of Superman. So that didn't go anywhere. That was in June of 1941. So in September of 1941, they filed a lawsuit against Fawcett and Republic Pictures, who was releasing, I guess, a Captain Marvel serial. And it sat in legal limbo for 7 years until it finally went to trial in March 1948. By that time, DC and Superman Inc. had merged into National Comics, so they were just the sole plaintiff in the case. Their argument was that Captain Marvel's main powers and characteristics, super strength, super speed, and vulnerability, a skin-tight costume with a cape, and a news reporter alter ego were derived directly from those of Superman. Fawcett's counter-argument was that although the 2 characters were indeed similar, the similarity was not infringing. Funnily enough, after Captain Marvel's comic strip had started to gain popularity, after the fact, Superman's comics introduced things like being able to make Superman fly, because he did not originally fly.
That seems weird to me. Like, I've always knew Superman. Well, obviously knew Superman to fly. I didn't think originally he couldn't.
Yeah, they introduced Lex Luthor, a bald mad scientist type, a lot like Dr. Sivana, and introduced Superboy, teenage sidekick to Superman, after Captain Marvel had introduced Captain Marvel Jr.
What do they say? Something in the sincerest form of flattery?
Yeah, really. So, yeah, well, a lot of people think that DC was just jealous that Superman was not the most popular.
Mhm.
So, National presented their evidence to the court, which contained over 150 pages of evidence featuring panels from their comics of Superman performing superheroic stunts, juxtaposed with panels from Captain Marvel doing the same stunts in magazines published at a later date than the Superman example. Fawcett countered by providing examples of Captain Marvel performing those feats at even earlier points in publication, or by providing examples of other comic book characters such as Popeye or Tarzan performing those feats in earlier published comic strips as well. So, the trial eventually ended in Fawcett's favor, because Fawcett's lawyers had uncovered that Superman's copyright status was actually, no longer valid. They found evidence that National Comics and McClure's syndicate failed to copyright several of their comic strips.
Ooh.
And the judge decided that National had abandoned its copyright such that it was no longer valid.
Oops. Somebody who was probably in the legal department to make sure about that probably was looking for another job.
Yeah.
PDQ.
However, the judge did find that Captain Marvel was an illegal copy of National Superman, which I don't understand how that entirely works.
I'm confused, how, because that sounds very, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
yeah.
It kind of sounds redundant.
Yeah.
Opposite and redundant, kind of like the same.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could copy something without breaking a copyright.
Right.
So I think that's what it is they weren't necessarily breaking any sort of copyright, but they weren't copying it. I think it was more probably a public confusion thing, probably in the judge's mind, two characters very similar, they look similar, the comics are drawn in a similar way, that people could confuse the two maybe. But I don't know. I couldn't necessarily find any further explanation on that. But anyway, so National / DC, the Superman camp, appealed the decision in 1951 to the U.S. State Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. The judge there ruled in National's favor, reversing part of the trial court's decision. Superman copyright was held valid, but the McClure strip was not under copyright. And they found that the Captain Marvel was an infringement on that copyright, the one that was still valid. He, however, did not find the character of Captain Marvel itself was an infringement, but rather specific stories or super feats could be infringements. But that would have to be determined by a retrial, and therefore he sent it back to a lower court.
Oh,
so,
please.
Yeah. So, this is all very convoluted, and we haven't even gotten to the part where Marvel gets involved. But
you've got to begin.
Yeah, but it's because of all. You'll see here, though, in a minute, because of all this, it opens up the door for Marvel. So you'll see. I'll get to that momentarily here. So instead of trying to appeal the second court decision to the Supreme Court or going through damage assessment, because all this stuff, it gets very expensive, Fawcett decided to settle with National out of court. By then, it was the 1950s, and comic sales had decreased anyway. So they decided monetarily it was not worth it. So they agreed to settle out of court. They pay National $400,000 in damages and agreed to cease publication of all Captain Marvel related comics. So at that point, Captain Marvel remained out of print for the rest of the 1950s and all the 1960s. But with I guess copyrights like these, if you don't use them every so often, you lose the copyright. So because they did not print anything for so long, the copyright went out of validity.
Ooh.
So that's kind of like why we keep getting like X-Men movies and like the Spider-Man movies from Sony and Fox. It's like, why are they still making these when, just let Disney handle, Marvel handle it. They can do so much better. It's so they can hold on to the rights.
They aren't letting the copyright get out of their hands.
Yeah, if you use it in whatever the legal, time frame is, you can keep it. Whether it's good or not doesn't matter. Just as long as you got to use it or you lose it. So in this case, because Fawcett didn't use it for so long, they lost it. So in 1967, Marvel trademarks a character called Captain Marvel. And they start using in Marvel Superheroes number 12. And then follow up a self-titled series.
And they could use it without getting into any problems.
Exactly.
That little rule. Yes.
That being said, in 1972, DC licensed the rights to all of Fawcett's superheroes and wanted to revive the Captain Marvel comic. But they titled it Shazam. They attained reprint rights for the original comic books and ran holding the older stories with the Shazam title on it. However, the license agreement required a per-use fee for every appearance by a Fawcett character. So that could have gotten expensive really quickly.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, so they used them very sparingly until the Shazam series entered in 1978. I guess the way it was is they could on the cover they could call it Shazam. They were allowed to call the character Captain Marvel inside the comics, but not actually title the comic Captain Marvel. At least as the way the 70s went. So in 1987, they relaunched Captain Marvel again, this time calling it Shazam: The New Beginning, and purchased the full rights to all of Fawcett's superheroes and had them all by 1991. However, it was not as successful as it had been for Fawcett. And DC claims that part of the reason was because they couldn't call it Captain Marvel because Marvel had the trademark. So they rebooted the entire comic line in the New 52 in 2011 and renamed the character Shazam, and is now being called Shazam to this day in print and now in the movies. So Marvel at the same time, while this is going on, because if you don't use a copyright, if you don't use it, you lose it. Mm-hmm. So even though they had launched their version of Captain Marvel back in the day, it necessarily wasn't that successful. But because they wanted to keep the trademark, over time, we have had Marvel, Genisvel, Philovel, Near. It's KHN''NR. So pronounce that how you will.
Yeah.
Novar. Yeah. Novar and Carol Danvers. So Carol Danvers originally went by the name Miss Marvel. And she originally got her powers by being caught in an explosion with the original Marvel. Very kind of similar to what happens in the Captain Marvel movie. However, she loses her powers and memories because of Rogue from the X-Men touches her. And we know Rogue's powers. She takes people's powers when she touches them. So Professor X is able to restore her memories, but not her powers. However, a race called the Brood comes along and gives her new powers. And then she goes by the name Binary, and then Warbird, and then Miss Marvel again until Marvel dies, and then she takes the name Captain Marvel. So now, in 2019, we have Captain Marvel in the MCU, and Shazam, who way back in the day was originally called Captain Marvel in the DCU. All because if it hadn't been for essentially DC getting mad because Superman was not selling as well as Captain Marvel and filing this lawsuit and everything dragging out so that it ended up costing more money than it was worth, Fawcett dropping the comic altogether, losing the copyright. So then actual Marvel comes along and decides that Captain Marvel, because they're Marvel Comics, would be a great name for a character. Trademarks that name. We now have essentially 2 Captain Marvel movies, but one's not called Captain Marvel because DC is not allowed to use that name. Is that just wild or what?
It's wild.
It is.
It's just crazy how this all works out. So
I mean, I know comic companies like to not necessarily steal from each other, but borrow it. I don't know, but I never see it. I never thought anything to this degree of.
I know.
Using
it's crazy.
I'm not gonna lie. I kind of would like to see, not necessarily a movie, but maybe a mini, maybe a short film of the lawsuit, because that kind of seems interesting. Maybe I'm just weird.
No, there's a lot of documentaries out there. There's a documentary I watched. I think it's on Hulu. It was on Hulu, all about the guy, the other guy. Speaking of Superman, that helped develop Superman, but never got credit for it until after his death. Because it was a very common thing, especially in the 70s. Even, as much as people praise and say great things about Stan Lee, may he rest in peace, but he did some shady things in his day. But that was just the way the comic industry was in that time period, because comics were really popular in the 30s and 40s. Died off in the 50s,
thanks to some of the
television
censors, and the censors,
and then saw this resurgence in the 60s and was really kind of huge again by the 70s. But by then, we had the big powerhouses. We had Marvel and DC, the 2 big pillars of the comic industry. And it was all about the fight for power and, getting people to spend money on your products, not just the comics, but all the tie-in products, anything you could license to get your character's symbol or whatever on, the comic, the cartoons, the Saturday morning cartoons and things like that, and toys. It was all about exposure for the characters to make that almighty dollar. So both companies did some not nice things to themselves, to the people within their companies and to each other. But there's some skeletons in the closet there for both companies, but this is just one of those that's it's crazy to think that this lawsuit ends up opening the door for Marvel to sweep in, trademark a character who has kind of similar powers to Shazam, but not. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because they have the trademark. So, and they're, obviously now, from here going on, probably for the foreseeable future, if you say the name Captain Marvel, people are going to think Brie Larson. They're going to think that movie that has now crossed the $1 billion threshold. In the box office, people aren't going to think Shazam. You say Captain Marvel and you say DC's Captain Marvel, you're going to be like, what's his face that's in both of these movies and Guardians of the Galaxy, and be like, who? So that's my review of Shazam and your little history lesson there. The history of Shazam / Captain Marvel, who is not Brie Larson. So, but like I said, if you're halfway invested in the DC universe, I would say go see it. I wouldn't say you need to rush out and go see it. You could probably give it time. Maybe wait till it gets into the dollar theater.
I wish I had a dollar theater. I keep hearing about them, but I don't.
Yeah. Oh. You could even probably wait till it ends up on Redbox. Visually, it looks really good. Some of the CGI, especially when he's flying, doesn't look the best. Although I guess compared to other big tentpole superhero movies, this one was made for a measly $90 million. So I guess that shows. And that CGI.
Can't believe we're saying 90 million like it's nothing.
Yeah. It was made for a measly $90 million. It's not. I don't think it's something you have to see on the big screen. You could easily wait till later. And if you haven't watched anything in the DC universe yet, first of all, why have you not watched Wonder Woman? Second of all, if you're still waiting, you could easily watch this one and be fine. You don't need to know. You do not need to have seen Wonder Woman or Batman vs. Superman or Justice League or Aquaman at all.
That's good, because I've only seen Wonder Woman in like 3/4 of Suicide Squad.
Yeah. Well, the Suicide Squad's its own hunk of mess. So,
Aren't they rebooting it from what I've heard?
Supposedly, with the one James Gunn is doing, it's going to be a soft reboot. So, especially now with Joaquin Phoenix's Joker movie coming out later this year, and I'm not entirely sure how that's going to fit into anything, if at all.
And then Will Smith not reprising his role.
Yeah.
If memory serves.
Yeah. So the DC universe is a bit of a mess. But that being said, this is a high point, I think. So enjoy it while it lasts, folks, because who knows what's coming down the pipeline. It could be another decent movie. It could be another hot mess. All right. That being said, if any of our listeners also saw Shazam and want to give your 2 cents, did you think it was halfway decent like I did? Or did you think it was a hot mess? Or somewhere in the middle? Or none of the above? I don't know. You can send us feedback. The easiest way to do that is to go to our website, which is the5ishfangirls.com. From there, you can link to, you can send us email, or link to any of our other social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, where you can message us that way. There's also the link to the Goodreads book club. Every month we read a Doctor Who related book. The poll is open at the moment, so you can vote for May's book and join in the discussion for April's book.
And April's book is The Scratch Man.
Yep. Written by Tom Baker.
Yes.
Excuse me. If you wish to financially support us, you can do that a number of ways. If you wish to support us on a regular monthly basis, you can do that via Patreon, which is also linked on our website. If you want to do a one-time financial donation, just give us your money directly. You can do that via Ko-fi. And then also you can help financially support us via our Amazon affiliate link. So if you need to start getting ready for those summer family vacations, need to buy some new bathing suits or aqua socks or pool noodles or whatever, and you do your shopping on Amazon, you can click on our link and do all your shopping, and we get a small kickback from Amazon. It doesn't cost you any more. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can use your Prime account, get that free 2-day shipping, because otherwise I'm sure they charge you an arm and a leg to mail pool noodles. So you can do that. And then also there's a link to our Redbubble merch store. So you can buy shirts and bags and phone covers and mugs and all sorts of things with our logo on it, along with a handful of other designs, with more designs coming down the pipeline eventually. So those are all great ways to financially support us. If you can't financially support us, you can also support us by sharing our show with your friends and family. So if you like what you are hearing, please let other people know. It's given us some nice warm fuzzies to see random people that we have no idea who you are, but thank you for mentioning us when you've got friends and family members looking for podcast recommendations and we get tagged. And it's pretty awesome. It's like, oh, you've been mentioned here. Like, who mentioned us? And none of us have any idea who it is. I'm like, oh, there's people actually listen to us and actually think we're worthy of being shared. And it's not like, our mothers. We greatly appreciate the fact that you feel that we're worth mentioning to other people. That brings all sorts of warm fuzzies. It's pretty awesome. So I think that is it. So always welcome to hit us up on the social medias. And we've got other exciting things coming down the pipeline. So watch this space. So with that, we shall sign off for this week.
This is Brittany in Bethlehem saying goodnight.
This is Holly from Wisconsin saying good evening.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. I got nothing. Shazam! Lightning bolt!
Listening to the Five-ish Fangirls podcast. You can find more episodes and information at thefivishfangirls.com. Any and all books, movies, games, and any other forms of media mentioned are owned and operated by the respective copyright holders. No copyright infringement is intended or implied. If you wish to support the show, the easiest way is to leave us a rating and review on iTunes. More ratings and reviews will make it easier for others to find the show. If you wish to support us monetarily, you can do so at patreon.com/5ishfangirlspodcast. All money goes towards fees and equipment to keep the show going. For official Five-ish Fangirls merchandise, visit redbubble.com/people/5ishfangirls. We love hearing from our listeners and encourage feedback. You can email us at fiveishfangirls@gmail.com. You can also like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/fiveishfangirls. Thank you so much for listening, and may the squee be with you.